and if anyone else joins us, well, we're recording the presentation this evening, so if anyone joins late, they'll be able to watch it recorded, or if anyone missed the meeting tonight, they'll be able to watch it recorded. So welcome to our virtual public meeting about the Congress Street Bridge study. This is the first of 2 public meetings that we'll have as part of this project. I'm going to go through some of the Zoom protocol this evening. You can type at any point a question through the Q&A option of the webinar. Assuming that our attendance stays low this evening, we may open it up to like a raise your hand virtual Q&A, but certainly through the presentation, feel free to type any questions that you have. You can also contact us directly through the chat. So we'll go ahead and get started with a short presentation. Our agenda this evening, we're going to do a quick round of introductions. We'll cover the study area of the project, the associated projects that we looked at, the existing conditions, as well as our draft of priority projects that we started to identify. And then we'll open it up to comment and questions. Should note that this study is funded by the New York State Department of State as part of their LWRP program. Quick introduction of the players in this study. It is the City of Watervliet, and Joe will give a more thorough introduction, partnering with the City of Troy. Those are the 2 entities leading this project. I am Lindsay Zefting with Alta Planning and Design, and I'm the project manager for this study. With us, we also have the Chazen companies, Floyd Albert and EDR, working with us on this project. And again, I'm Lindsay Zefting with Alta Planning and Design, Principal and Project Manager, and Jill Lasavita, if you can do a quick introduction, well, actually a thorough introduction of how this project came to be.
Sure. Again, my name is Joe Lasavita. I'm with the City of Watervliet as their General Manager. My partner with this project from the City of Watervliet is our former General Manager, Paul Murphy, and now our consultant for the city. Paul was the grant writer, worked on this project with the prior administration to apply for this grant. And the grant to get this bridge study was to partner with the City of Troy and look at how we could improve the connectivity between the cities, both from a pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular, but also look at how the bridge operates and what new changes we could bring to the city in the time frame that we are in. The bridge was built back in a time frame when there was not a lot of vehicular traffic. The car ownership back then might have been less than what we see in today's driveway. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to partner with the City of Troy and move forward with this. Now the grant, I think, was a 2019 award. It is 2021 that we're getting into it. But I think part of that became when the new administration came into the City of Watervliet, we saw the need to maybe expand on some of the proposed improvements at that time, and maybe also expand the footprint of what we want to do and the outcome. The outcome for the City of Watervliet, and I'm sure James will be speaking on behalf of Troy in a short moment, but the outcome for Watervliet was really going to be to get safe traffic, safe pedestrian movements through the intersection of the bridge and 2nd Avenue, but more importantly, also look at what's happening in the outlining streets with also the connection to get to Hudson Shores Park. That proved to be a very important transportation end zone, if you would, to get to people so they could walk there, they could bike there. And that was what the city just kind of slowed the process down. So it took us a little bit longer to get this hit the ground running. But I do have to say, I'm very excited with Alta leading the charge and the team that they put together. And I'm very excited with the outcomes for this project because I've seen a lot of great conversations leading up to tonight's public hearing. So we look forward to working with the public on this.
Thank you, Joe. James, do you want to do a quick introduction for the City of Troy?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm James Rath. I'm assistant planner here for the city of Troy, and I'm managing this project. I'm really excited to work with the City of Watervliet and also planning on this one. Joe, you did a great job of introducing the project and talking a little bit about what's happening on the Watervliet side. On the Troy side, and this project is mainly focused on what's happening on the bridge and on either end of it. And I'm sure Lindsay and Joe will go into more detail on that. But broadly in Troy, we wanted to use this opportunity to do similar things that Joe highlighted, make the built environment more pedestrian friendly and easier to get around using a bike, transit, and then obviously improving the roadway for drivers as well. So we'll look at River Street and reconnecting the area there. Really excited to talk about those things and what will happen on the bridge. Lindsay, I don't want to get too into the details, so I'll just pass it back over to you guys. But happy to be here.
Don't steal the thunder. We'll get there. All right. So I'm going to walk us through some of the existing conditions and background information that we looked at. First and foremost, what is the study area? So this was identified really loosely up front of the bridge and the surrounding areas. But we worked with the steering committee at our first meeting of identifying exactly what are our limits and why are our limits what they are. So we're looking all the way to 5th Ave in Watervliet and having that connection down Main Street, down 19th Street, connection to businesses. We're looking to the south in Watervliet, past 16th Street, starting to make that connection towards the city civic centers. And we definitely wanted to carry the study area up to 23rd and that northern connection to Hudson Shores Park. Obviously, we're looking at the bridge and the waterfront and everything in between. In the city of Troy, our southern limit is Division Street. Our easternmost limit is 3rd Street. And then we're looking at Congress or State Street as our northern limit to really look at what is that existing connection. I wanted to do a quick poll of all the participants that are here today to see where everyone is from. Are you within the city of Watervliet, within the study area, just outside the study area? So we'll give it a few minutes and give a chance for everyone to participate in the poll. Give it a couple more seconds. We almost have everyone participating, which is great. All right, Francisco, do you want to end the poll? Great. So we have a number of participants from Troy, just outside the study area or outside the study area. 4 people within the study area, 3 people within Watervliet, 4 people within Watervliet, and 1 other. That's great. So now we know more or less who's here. All right, close that poll. So Joe mentioned this briefly, the Congress Street Bridge. So looking at the history of the Congress Street Bridge, it's important to look backwards. The original bridge was built in 1874. It was rebuilt in 1927, and that's what's looked here. It is the Congress Street Bridge, as most people know it, but it doesn't actually connect directly to Congress Street in the city of Troy. That's because that's where the bridge you see in these pictures was connected to. When they rebuilt the bridge in 1969, they built the bridge between Ferry Street and the city of Watervliet, 19th Street, in a new location so that they could leave the old bridge in place while they built the new one. Because of the river traffic and needing to span over 77, that's a lot of the reason for the height and the curvature that you see on the bridge today. So one of the things that we started with is looking at all the background studies that have been completed. City of Watervliet, City of Troy, and others have actively been working on this area in a lot of different contexts. So we looked at the existing projects that are moving forward, as well as the studies recently completed. That includes the Watervliet Shared Use Path, the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail, and Empire State Trail. That path was completed and opened this past year. Yay. There's also the South Troy Riverfront Bikeway that was completed in 2018. Troy is working on the extension of the South Industrial Road. We also looked at the bike ped master plans in both communities, the I-787 study, among others, and both DRI plans that were completed for the City of Watervliet and the City of Troy. We looked at existing walking and bicycling facilities. So you can see mapped here in green is the existing shared use paths. That's within Watervliet along Broadway and down into Hudson Shores Park. We also have the two-way cycle track and the sidewalk combination along Front Street in the City of Troy. We also looked at existing on-road bike facilities. So there's the bike lanes on 2nd Ave in Watervliet, as well as some shared lanes in Troy and Watervliet. We also wanted to look at the sidewalk connections. Most of the roadways within the study area have sidewalks on both sides of the street. So there are some gaps or some that only have it on one side, but generally that pedestrian connectivity or infrastructure is in place, including on the Congress Street Bridge on the north and south side. We also wanted to look at transit and potential connectivity to the transit network. There are actually 15 CDTA bus routes that go through the study area. There are 9 bus stops located within the study area. And the new Bus Plus route River Corridor, the blue line, has just been implemented within the study area. So that travels down, oddly enough, I did this a little bit backwards on this map. The Bus Plus blue line is actually the orange line on the map you see. So that does cross the Congress Street Bridge and travel through the City of Troy and the City of Watervliet. We also looked at the existing traffic volumes. That's important for looking at intersection capacity, roadway capacity. Is a roadway under or over designed, and vehicular connectivity. Generally, there's 10 to 15,000 vehicles per day traveling. On the major roadways, 19th, the Congress Street Bridge, Ferry Street, Congress Street within the City of Watervliet and Troy. But the minor collectors tend to be 2,500 to 10,000 vehicles a day. So generally speaking, that 10 to 15,000 threshold isn't significantly higher, wouldn't warrant an increase in capacity. We also looked at the city zoning. We wanted to look at that land use. There is a strong connection between land use and transportation. So we looked at the zoning within the City of Watervliet and the City of Troy. Generally within the study area, it's all higher density, business, mixed use, residential being multifamily or 2-family. And there's also the institutional land use, which would be Sage College within the City of Troy. Beyond zoning, we looked at the actual land use, the building footprints. So, you can see here, you've got a lot of commercial activity within the study area. Again, the community services or the institutional uses, but there's also some residential within the study area and small pockets of some vacant lands as well. Obviously some significant parkland as well with Hudson Shores Park and Watervliet. We did look at the acreage of these land uses. We broke it down to residential, commercial, looking at community services, private versus public. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in looking at this data is the high percentage of public land within this study area. Yes, you have 30 acres of the Hudson River if you look at the study area in total, but 30% of the study area is public right-of-way. So it's within the either DOT or the local municipality control, and that's, again, public land, public right-of-way. If you discount the Hudson River, that public right-of-way makes up over almost 45% of the study area. So it's a significant portion of land to be addressed on how we want to use it as the public. We also looked at the natural and historic character. We looked at topography, which has its own challenges within both communities. We looked at the 100 and 500 year floodplains. We also wanted to take a look at historic sites within the study area to make sure we're factoring that into any recommendations. So with that background information, we started looking at and discussing with the steering committee as well as a number of stakeholders, ranging from New York State DOT to the Troy Housing Authority, and discussing what the opportunities and challenges are within the study area and identifying what we're calling priority projects. We identified a number of other recommendations for, or potential recommendations for bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, general traffic flow, but these are the priority projects that really rose to the top. Implementing a shared use path on the Congress Street Bridge, connecting River Street, converting Front Street to a trail, looking at the Ferry Street corridor in Troy, looking at the 19th Street and 2nd Ave intersection and really downsizing that, making it more pedestrian scale, a southern connection to Hudson Shores Park, and traffic calming and enhancing that access to Hudson Shores Park. So I just went through this really quickly. I'll go through them in a little bit more detail in the map view. So one of the things that really rose to the top is the Congress Street Bridge and its use as a vehicular bridge. It is 4 lanes in either direction. It has 2 sidewalks on either side, but absolutely no separation for vehicular traffic. It was roughly a decade ago when New York State DOT did some major rehab work on the bridge. And that included a lot of lane closures. And I remember traveling across that bridge on almost a daily basis while that work was going on, and didn't bother me. There wasn't really a lot of impact to those lane closures based on the traffic volumes. The bridge was over capacity. Actually, hold on, can we end this poll real quick? I'm gonna keep talking before we launch that poll. Sorry about that. So we're looking at converting 2 of the existing travel lanes into some sort of shared use path, and exactly what that shared use path would look like is up for discussion, but dedicating almost half the bridge to bicycle and pedestrian use so it can be a comfortable connection. We're also looking at closing a portion of Front Street and converting it into a shared use path that would be along the Front Street. Hey, Francisco, I'm hearing a lot of feedback. Is that coming from somewhere? Or is that just me?
I muted the person.
Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So converting Front Street to a shared use path, we'll be looking at traffic circulation and making sure that people can still get to where they're going. Part of the reason that we can close that portion of Front Street is by removing the ramps, the slip ramps that come off the Congress Street Bridge, and actually connecting and reconnecting the street grid at River Street. So that is one of the proposed projects. So that better connection to the street grid, Riverfront Trail, and the Ferry Street Tunnel is a little bit of a disconnect, as much as my kids absolutely love driving through that tunnel. The pedestrian connection up and over the tunnel is a little bit hidden. So how do we enhance that connection and make it more visible and viable for people to connect down to the river, the new Riverfront Trail? Looking in Watervliet, we're looking at a potential southern connection to Hudson Shores Park. 23rd could absolutely use some enhancements, some traffic calming, some pedestrian connection. So it's a little bit more clear. It's a lot of vast pavement, and that makes that northern entrance to Hudson Shores Park a little bit more uncomfortable and certainly more vehicle oriented. But having a southern connection to Hudson Shores Park would also enhance that connectivity and circulation and access to the park as well. Joe, I believe you mentioned the intersection of 19th and 2nd. You have the brand new Bus Plus CDTA bus stops that are there, a small parklet that's there, but the intersection is vast. Crossing as a pedestrian in a very pedestrian-oriented environment with transit and all the businesses that are there is uncomfortable. So how do we enhance that? Looking at shortening up the crosswalks, reducing some of the turning lanes, reducing some of those turning radii possibly. So those are all things that we're looking at. So in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at. Now we can launch the last poll, and I just want to get a sense from this group of these projects that we've just started to highlight, which sound the most interesting or the most important to you? Which would you like to see happen? We'll give this one a minute or two as people think about this. We've got 18 of 26 that have voted. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so. So far, a lot of interest in the shared use path on the Congress Street Bridge. All right, we've got, thank you. All right, so that is at least the most important projects. I realize everyone may favor every one or more than one, but at least one way to score these. So the shared use path on the Congress Street Bridge seems to interest a lot of folks, connecting River Street and removing the ramps, converting Front Street to a trail, and southern connection to Hudson Shores Park and traffic calming on 23rd. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing those results, close that. While I'm still looking at this map, again, I mentioned that we're looking beyond these priority projects at general recommendations. I certainly don't want to miss that point. So we are looking at other connections beyond 19th Street to be able to access Watervliet, whether that be 21st or 18th, improving the connectivity on 19th Street beyond to the west of 2nd Ave. We're also looking at, just general bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, the connectivity to Broadway, enhancing that connection to the existing shared use path, wayfinding. We're looking at River Street, north of Congress Street in the city of Troy, and what that traffic circulation might be, and enhancing the connectivity and the access to businesses there, as well as just general circulation. So. And connection to the riverfront within Troy as well. So with that, what's next beyond this public meeting? We're gonna open it up to questions and answers and comments. But we are completing this draft study fairly quickly. We should have the draft study in our next public meetings scheduled in March. So you won't have to wait 8 months to see what we've come up with and how we've incorporated your thoughts and ideas. It'll only be 2 months from now. So I'm really looking forward to that. James or Joe, is there anything that I missed that you wanted to add before we open it up to our participants this evening?
No, I think you went through everything really that we're talking about. It's a lot to wrap our heads around. So I think as we go through the discussion, we can understand each aspect of the project a little bit better. So.
Yeah, I would agree with James. He did an excellent job kind of bringing that out to the public as to what we're trying to do on both sides of the river. But I think I just want to draw a quick analogy, make a little bit of, light of what the project actually is trying to do, in the sense that I looked at the logo here for the first time, really looking at the bridge, Congress Street Bridge, and looking at the dimensions of the houses on both sides. From my perspective as an economic developer, as a developer myself, and being in my position over the year, I'm looking at it and kind of liken that to the little engine that could. We want to be. Watervliet to the left, Troy to the right, small house, big house. I think what this study is ultimately going to be from a perspective of economic development is it's going to bring those two cities together. It's going to bring Watervliet to maybe a point in the time where we might have been forgotten for development. And now it's going to bring us a little closer to see what Troy has done over the years in a very positive way. And that's our hope with some of these improvements, at least from my end, is to see these improvements tighten up the radius in the connection area, make it more safer for people to walk, but also bring that level of development right down into our business corridor in the future, and make Troy or Watervliet to be as vibrant as Troy has come to be over the years that I've seen it develop. So very, very hopeful, very, very positive on the outcomes from this study.
Yeah, I love that. We've kind of been talking a little bit about that in our meetings, getting past the idea that we're competing with one another for development, and the idea that we're one region, and obviously Troy and Watervliet being so close, just separated by the river. So I love that that's the take on your end, Joe, and we certainly agree. I mean, success in Watervliet is success for Troy. So that's kind of what this project's about.
Very well said, you two. I'm glad I called on you to wrap up this presentation. With that, I mean, we have less than 30 participants on the call today. So I'll start with at least the one question that has been typed in, but Francisco, if you want to allow people to, I guess, raise their hands, and I can unmute folks if people would rather talk or express their comment, but certainly you can chat. So David, major questions, potential funding, who decides, timeline for completion. Yeah, so there's not a straight answer to any of those questions. All of these priority projects, you know, how we always approach our planning studies, and I should say I'm a planner and an engineer, is feasibility, and not something that's pie in the sky, but something that can go out and get funded and get built. The funding that's available will, you know, really be determined on all of our governments, our federal governments, our state governments, and what funding they can provide us. But as far as who decides, really it's, you know, looking definitely for public inputs, but it will be the City of Watervliet and the City of Troy that will, you know, decide their respective projects, I would say. James? Joe?
Yeah, those are great questions. We've also been saying that we're not interested in having a study that's just going to sit on the shelf and collect dust. So if there are concerns about that happening, you know, just know that we're right there with you. Our intention is to absolutely pursue funding. What that exact funding stream is obviously to be determined, as Lindsay pointed out. But I will point out that this is not just a transportation project. It's also an economic development project, as Joe has mentioned. So it kind of opens up the doors for funding opportunities a little bit more. And we'll be looking everywhere we can to find funding for it. The other thing I should also point out is these projects that we've identified, these priorities, will coincide with a couple other things that the public has probably been hearing about. The Taylor redevelopment of the THA sites right there on our side of the river. Those buildings coming down and being turned, redeveloped for affordable housing, and with the addition of other housing options as well. And then the Congress and Ferry Street redesigns going east from this project area up to the hill. So we have a lot of things that we're tying in. Should also throw in the industrial road project to the south of the project area. Not to overwhelm people, but, you know, they're just to kind of paint the bigger picture of how this ties everything together. So we're recognizing this as a pretty important time and a pretty important project. And yeah, there's a lot of things to go out and get funding for to build. So.
Yeah, and I see that Tom from the Troy Housing Authority is on our meeting today. And Tom, do you want to chime in with anything related to the Taylor Apartments project? give him a chance to unmute.
I know I didn't quite do that one justice. So yeah, if Tom could, then that'd be great. They've also had their own public meetings, and I think we'll continue to do so. So if that's of interest to people, definitely look out for those.
And phase 1 is in front of the Troy Planning Commission right now, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it'll be broken down into 3 or 4 phases, and phase 1 is going to be in front of the Planning Commission on the 28th of this month, held on Zoom as well. So you can go to the Planning Department's webpage and get the details for that.
Okay. So Amy asked if the slides will be available after the meeting. I believe we can make the presentation and available on the 2 city websites. We have recorded the meeting, so we can make the recording available. So yes, we will make that happen. Michael is asking, would traffic coming on 23rd, the entrance to Hudson Shores Park, include sidewalks to properly connect that entrance to the park back into Watervliet and Green Island? I believe to some extent that's started to happen with the shared use path that Watervliet has completed. You now have that shared use path that connects Broadway under 787 into the park. Green Island has extended their sidewalks south. But without enhancement to 23rd itself and defining turning lanes and reducing the pavement width that's there, I still don't think that hasn't quite reached its potential, I guess is a good way to phrase it. So that's what we're going to be looking into is how to enhance those existing connections, those recent improvements through additional improvements to 23rd. You know, that does make the connection to Hudson Shores Park, but there still also is the issue crossing 23rd. The Watervliet Housing Authority has a site there with a lot of people that have interest and do cross 23rd, and it's not exactly conducive to doing that right now. Joe, I know this is one project you're really passionate about. What are your thoughts on 23rd?
Yeah, and I think our last stakeholder meeting brought out a lot of good conversation on slowing down traffic there and doing traffic calming measures. We also learned through the efforts of Alta and some of the other traffic engineers that are on the project that there's a lot of pavement in that area. And in order to narrow that and maybe boulevard it, we talked about a roundabout there. So those are options that we're considering and looking at. But those are kind of gateway enhancements to that area of both the city of Watervliet and to the village of Green Island. So those are other conversations we're having at this point. Which also, again, it directs traffic and it slows it down to a point where you can actually have safety for pedestrian and bike into the Hudson Shores Park. So once we get to final designs, I think we'll start to see how those enhancements will work better in that area.
Thanks, Joe. Sandra, you asked a question in the chat, which I'm more than happy to repeat, but I saw you raise your hand earlier. Did you want to ask your question yourself? I'll give Sandra a minute.
Hello.
Hi, Sandra.
I drive 19th Street quite a bit. I live just outside your study area in Troy, and I'm very concerned about the congestion on 19th Street. This view that you have approaching from Troy shows, you know, you get essentially three lanes of traffic feeding into 19th Street, going, is that west or north? I guess north.
You're looking west in this photo.
Okay. So as you drive into Watervliet, as you get into that little commercial area up there, you know, so many times, I mean, people just have nowhere to go and they cross in the middle of traffic. There's parking on both sides. Buses are pulling in and pulling out. It's really congested. And I kind of wondered if your study, you know, looks into that, like a better design for that part of 19th Street.
Yeah, and we are specifically looking at this intersection and the area surrounding it. And we're looking at it from all different aspects, from the vehicular aspect as well as the pedestrian aspect. And there's always some compromise to be had there to increase level of service and reduce delays for vehicles. That's why you get the left turn lane, the through lane, the right lane that you see in that image there. But it also lengthens that crosswalk. That crosswalk crosses 5 lanes of traffic. So we're looking at the traffic analysis, you know, making sure that there's still good flow of traffic and it's not congested and you don't have significant delays or long vehicular lines at the intersections, while still trying to reduce or clean up, narrow some of those turning lanes that are there to shorten the crosswalks, perhaps even including what we call pedestrian refuge islands, which would really break the crosswalk up into 2. So it's a little easier to cross. So we're looking at that. But you also mentioned, and I think Joe, one of our stakeholders, mentioned too, the buses, which is, I think, great. It's great enhancements to Watervliet to have that, but potentially looking at accommodating that off the road. So they're not blocking traffic like they do today. That might be something that we can look at.
Yeah, and if I could say something too, Sandra, is I think as you heard Lindsay's explanation, we use terminology such as pedestrian safety, and we also looked at levels of service. Typically, you know, when we look at traffic improvements, we always tend to look at the levels of service. So that means it's a vehicular look or a vehicular view. The one thing I'm excited about is we're really combining both the pedestrian and the vehicle and making it safe for both to go. Yes, levels of service for the vehicle is there, but a lot of concentration is being looked at in narrowing these lanes, narrowing those acceleration chances to get through the light and make it safe for cross access by pedestrians along the way. So again, I can't say it enough that I'm excited to see what comes out of this for that area, because it's a very important component, bringing the residential pocket very close to this area down safely to the park and across the bridge to where both cities can meet. So.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Amy had asked, what is the time frame of these projects and how realistic that these projects move forward in the light of the other projects? I think it goes back to, it depends. I think there's a lot of momentum in the city of Troy and city of Watervliet to see these happen. It's just a matter of having the funding sources available.
I'll just add the Industrial Road project, which I think that's the working name. It'll likely be called River Street South or something like that. That project's fully funded and moving forward, at least phase 1. And so phase 2 is now happening. And the Congress and Ferry Tip project, which is, like I said, a bit east of this area, going along Congress Ferry up to the hill, that's also been funded. So, you know, that's 2 out of 4 aspects already. We will be looking for opportunities to combine some of these other elements and aspects to group them together and pursue funding. So how likely it is, you know, we can't obviously say, but again, we're going to be pursuing funding and looking at every opportunity we can find.
Joe, I imagine your answer is very, very similar. We'll be looking for funding and taking every opportunity we can find.
That's right. And with that also comes the right development that has to happen on our 19th Street corridor as well as 23rd as well. So we're going to be looking, or the 19th Street area, we're going to be looking at the right development, making sure that development that comes also looks at traffic, also looks at pedestrian, and not strictly looking at the dollars itself. So we got to make sure it's the right thing that comes to our city.
So there was another question here about traffic counts. So actually, I don't know how easy it's going to be for me to go back to the traffic map. actually, pretty easy. Noting that, you know, there's 15,000 vehicles a day on the bridge, but, you know, the ramp doesn't quite add up. Yeah, it's because you know, it's counting traffic on the ramps and Ferry Street, so they more or less add up. Counts are taken at different times, so traffic isn't always an exact science. But we are looking at the vehicle movements on the intersection, at the intersections, as well as on the main thoroughfares. We're also looking at the traffic studies differentiate between cars and trucks was the other question. Yes, the traffic data that we have does differentiate between vehicles and truck traffic. I don't have the percentage of truck traffic off the top of my head, but there are certain turning movements that are pretty high. We know that there's a lot of, can you guys see my pointer on the screen? Yes, James is saying yes. So we know that there's a lot of truck traffic coming from, well, South Industrial Road in Troy. And currently, because of the ramp system that's in place, they are coming underneath Front Street, looping all the way around and coming onto Congress Street this way, which is why this ramp volume is so high. And then they're taking the right onto 2nd Ave to get onto 787. So we know that that is a very common truck movement that we need to accommodate through our recommendations of the study. And then the grant that was awarded, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit more about the grants? There was a question about the amount of the grants. I assume the DOS grant that funded this study is what the question's referring to?
Yeah, I would think. Paul, would you mind jumping in on that for the city there? I know you were
Sure.
involved with that.
Yeah, the City of Watervliet applied for a LWRP grant for this bridge zone study. It was a collaborative effort with the City of Troy. The total amount received, the grant amount received, was $170,000, and that's from the New York State Department of State.
Thank you, Paul. Done. So is the plan to accommodate the truck traffic or trying to reroute onto the Menands Bridge? For the most part, we're trying to accommodate the truck traffic. We don't expect it to change. And with the connection of the River Street intersection, that should make that movement easier. James, is there anything as part of the South Industrial Road project that would shift some of that traffic south as well?
Yeah, it really does depend, and we're not quite at that point yet, Russ, to have a really concrete answer for you. I'm hoping, you know, the next presentation we can revisit that. But yeah, I mean, the part of the goal of the South Troy Industrial Project, which I'm not the project manager on, so I don't want to misspeak, but I believe is to obviously take the truck traffic off of the existing street network there in South Troy for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and push it onto the new road. So the access point might be easier for those trucks to go south and go over the Menands Bridge. Funny enough, though, the DOT is looking to potentially replace that bridge as well and potentially move the location. So we have to keep that in mind as well when we're talking about where that traffic is going to go. So a little bit of a moving target for us.
Yeah, and I imagine the Troy Menands Bridge study will happen over the next 1.5 to 2 years is likely a time frame for that study. Are there any other questions or comments? Does anyone have any ideas for the shared use path across the bridge, what they'd like to see there, or you know, a particular pedestrian or bicycle connection that we should be looking at or enhancing? waterfront amenities we should be considering? I'll give it another minute, see if anyone types in any additional questions or comments, or again, feel free to raise your hands and I can allow you to talk and unmute yourself. At this point, we'll go ahead, we'll wrap up this public meeting, but again, I'll remind everyone, we are working through these priority projects and recommendations really quickly over the next 2 months. So we'll be coming back out to the public with a draft study presenting to you concepts, what this shared use path across the bridge would actually look like, what these intersections would actually look like for your feedback sometime in March. With that, I'm going to take one more scroll through. One comment from Barb Nelson, very happy to see the study underway. Reconnecting downtown and South Troy on River Street is genius. So thanks to the City of Troy for pushing that idea along. I think it's a great one as well. All right, with that, I hope everyone enjoys their wonderful Wednesday evening, and I look forward to seeing you all back in a couple months' time to see what we've come up with.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James and Joe, for your participation tonight. It was really helpful.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, everybody, for joining in and tuning in.
All right.